Strangely, I feel like all the parts of my life have come together for this purpose, to protect Ihumātao. Ihumātao is land that is at the heart of Auckland, New Zealand, but is currently the subject of a political land struggle. Here I am at the age of 9. In a time capsule at school, I wrote that I wanted to become a lawyer to make a difference. I worked hard to achieve that. And in the same year that I graduated and was about to go into a law practice, I discovered that there were survey pigs on ancestral land that was due to become public open space. This was a huge concern for us. And so, upon investigations, we discovered that there was a housing development being proposed for this land. I went immediately into beast mode, or what we would call kaitiaki mode. And quickly, I put my law career on hold, and I decided to pursue justice for this land and fulfill my responsibility to the cultural and heritage landscapes at Ihumātao. I've unknowingly and unexpectedly become the spokesperson for the Soul campaign that was co-founded by me and my 5 cousins and supported by our families and our community. And now we are working towards the protection and preservation of ancestral, cultural, and heritage landscapes at Ihumātao. Now, the photo that you see here is Ihumātao. It is the oldest continuously occupied Māori village in Auckland, and arguably the oldest across the country. For over 600 years, people there have been turning the rocks, arranging and rearranging them to create stone walls, gardens, roads, houses, and more recently, airport runways. Nationally significant to our nation's history because it was here that gardens were intensively cultivated by Māori that fed the growing population of Auckland, which made it one of the wealthiest areas in Aotearoa. Archaeologists would argue that Ihumātao is internationally significant because Aotearoa was the last point of human migration from Africa. And here, Ihumātao, the landscape speaks to the earliest human inhabitation in New Zealand. Dave Vart, a well-respected archaeologist in New Zealand, describes this area as a thin place, a place where the veil that separates time and space is transparent, where the spiritual and the physical, the past and the present all merge. A sacred place, he says, a wāhi tapu. Dave will always make the point that he's a scientist and he's not meant to feel these sorts of ways. He's been around the world and worked on many projects, but he says that at Ihumātao, that's the only place that he feels that sort of thinness. This is the sort of significance that we talk about here at Ihumātao. There were hundreds of acres of this sort of land all across Auckland, but in the last 40 years, many of it has been destroyed. And that Ihumātao remains the last remnants of this sort of landscape, and that is why we are trying to protect it. Ihumātao is only 5 minutes from the Auckland International Airport, and although thousands of us drive past it every day and fly over it, few of us have ever heard about this place. Situated well within the boundaries of Auckland, Ihumātao feels off the beaten track. And in many ways, it is. This is probably why Ihumātao has remained largely outside the consciousness of many New Zealanders until recently, until we developed a campaign to protect it from development. History on this landscape is not monumental. There's no fixed beginnings or endings, grand narratives or imposing structures. Instead, the history there is fine-grained, ancestral and deep-rooted. Heritage for me is anything that is valued by communities, that speaks to the past, that informs our future. Ihumātao is just that for me. It is there that I possess my greatest sense of belonging and connection to the landscapes and to my culture and to my ancestors. For us as Māori, this is termed tūranga waiwai. It is there that I feel this umbilical connection to the land, the mountains, the awa, the moana, because it is those things that sustain me physically, mentally, socially, and this aligns with a holistic worldview, a Māori worldview. The narratives of this place are grafted through tangible remnants of stone, soil, and water. But the true beauty of this place lies within the intangible values. They reach back beyond the narratives that historians and archaeologists and heritage practitioners and lawmakers would conventionally rely on. These intangible values are the things that create deep senses of belongings, and those are represented through the stories, the songs, and the relationships that people have with this place. The importance of these intangible values are overlooked time and time again through our heritage management of places of importance in New Zealand. This raises the question for me, do we know what's important about our heritage in New Zealand? For me, I don't think we do. Well, it's not balanced to say the least. Heritage New Zealand is the agency that is tasked with looking after our nation's heritage. But when I look at the sites protected on its heritage list, I notice that over 80% of them are colonial built structures or colonial places. And then I look at the other 10% that are specifically Māori heritage sites. And the other 10% is probably a mixture of both. I ask, why is this so unbalanced? Are Māori heritage sites not important to our national heritage? If so, why isn't greater emphasis being placed on these indigenous sites? It seems to me that as a nation, we value some forms of heritage over others. But if heritage is not simply about those pretty things, why are we having so much trouble listing and protecting places and landscapes that are reminders to us of our pre-colonial legacies? A closer look at the evidence shows that there are over 600 churches, 340 church buildings protected on the heritage list, compared to the 183 sites that are deemed wahitapu or wahitapu areas. What are we saying about our relationship to the past? How is this not a sign that the current list is needing a rebalancing and a serious critical review? Why is the focus still on built heritage, which is so disproportionately about colonial history? To put this further into context, the cultural landscape heritage at Ihumātao is currently the subject of an appeal in the Environment Court, because the national agency tasked with looking after our national places has approved an application to destroy heritage features on this land. Why? To make way for a multi-million-dollar housing complex proposed by Fletcher's Building Limited. When preparing to lodge our appeal to court, we uncovered that 95% of applications to modify and destroy archaeological sites are granted. I asked myself, how well are we protecting what is important to our nation? And have we got that balance right? Or is this more white space colonial structural racism? For example, here you have the Civic Theatre built in the late 1920s for entertainment purposes. Here you have Ihumātao, where the earliest inhabitants of Aotearoa lived and thrived for hundreds of years. The demolition of the Civic Theatre is prohibited, but for Ihumātao, Heritage New Zealand has approved the destruction of cultural and heritage sites that are significant to us as mana whenua, a city, and as a nation. Are places like the Civic Theatre more important to our national identity than these ancestral landscapes? Why is it that when it's colonial heritage, there is a higher threshold for preventing demolition? The key to our national identity is an outcome of the investment we make in protecting our heritage, whose identity, not just which race, but also which generation. consultation with a diversity of people with a connection to this land rather than the self-serving, limited group who will benefit from this development has been a criticism we have taken to the United Nations and have received support for. Today, I stand here before you all representing my family and my friends who are currently living at the site, those who have tirelessly given their time, their energy, and their resources to support this campaign. A lot of my friends are out partying or traveling, having families, extending their careers, but I've had to sacrifice a lot of those to attend meetings and to fulfill my obligations to the occupation. But I don't regret it, because I know this cause is so important, not just to me, but to my nieces and nephews, to our city, and to Aotearoa. Many people said I was young, dumb, naive, inexperienced, and couldn't do anything because I was a woman. But I ignored that and always thought that no matter how small I am, I can make a difference. I'm constantly asked in this campaign, how far will I go? I replied cheekily that I would die for this land. People would laugh, but I think back to Pete Bethune's closing TED Talk last year, that you haven't lived until you found a cause worth dying for. I think I've found that cause, and I'm prepared to die for it if I have to. My vision for the land is to return it or reclaim it for what it was once used for, to grow gardens to feed the growing population of Auckland. We acknowledge there's a housing issue, but not at the sacrifice of the significant landscape. We want to preserve this land for all New Zealanders to enjoy. This struggle is a struggle for justice. I'm calling out Heritage New Zealand, the government, Auckland Council, and Fletcher Building Limited, and their plans to destroy this landscape, which takes away the ability for our children and the future generations to connect with it. So this is a call to action. People are welcome to join us in the campaign to protect Ihumātao. I'm not asking people to die for it, to give up their careers, or occupy the land. It's small things like giving a thought to our campaign, liking a post on Facebook, writing a letter to your local MP, because we should do it for the sake of our children, our grandchildren, the environment, our heritage, and our history, and because the future depends on it. Recently, I was given a trespass notice that I want to share with you all. This reads, to Pania Newton and members of the Save Our Unique Landscape campaign. In accordance with the above act and section, you are hereby warned to stay off the place known as Ihumātao Quarry Road. It is an offence punishable by a fine not exceeding $1,000 or imprisonment not exceeding 3 months to enter the above address within 2 years from the date you received this warning. This was given to me by Fletcher Building Limited. They tried to trespass me from ancestral land that was meant to become a public open space for all New Zealanders to enjoy, not just the 480 millionaires who can afford to live there. Well, I stand here today and say to Fletchers that I'm not going anywhere. And I'll take a stand to save this land. I always end on this kōrero, or this waiata that we take to Waitangi every year, and it goes, e kōrerawa, e mutu te whawhai atu ki te kawanatanga e. We will never give up our rights to fight for what's right. Oh no, we will not. Nō reira, kei runga i tērā, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.